Like any good history lesson, this one begins with a story. Two brothers digging for fertile soil in Nag Hammadi, Egypt in 1945 will uncover a 2-meter tall urn, which would be filled with papyrus scrolls. These scrolls will be taken back to their home and used for fuel for the stove. However, after the brothers perform an honor killing in revenge for the murder of their father, they will ask a local priest to hold on to the papers for safekeeping. This priest will uncover the true value of these books and make them known to the world. In investigating these Gnostic texts, it becomes apparent that the practice of Christianity became wildly diverse in the first 2 centuries after the death of Jesus Christ. Many of these different schools or sects had interpreted differently Christianity and the fundamental ideas of the Church from the Old Testament. Through the reading of the Gnostic texts and an understanding of some of the early schools of Christianity, we can see that there is less of a focus on hierarchical church structure and obedience, and more of a focus on individual freedom and education, much like the Gospel of Philip, a Gnostic text which expresses the one who has knowledge is a free person, but the free person does not sin, for the one who sins is a slave of sin. It would seem that these alternative schools of Christianity were not beholden to the Old Testament and allowed people to develop their own ideas of God and life. This will be a remarked departure from most other forms of worship in the past. This free-thinking, mutable version of Christianity will be quelled and rigid orthodoxy put into its place. The persecution of the Gnostic schools and sects by what would eventually become the Orthodox Church can be heavily attributed to one man, Irenaeus. Upon becoming bishop of Lugdunum, he would write a book called Adversus Haereses, or Against Heresies, in which his main claim would be against the Valentinians school of Christianity in Rome that had been created by Valentinus, a man who had been passed by for the position of Bishop of Rome, and so started his own school with radically different beliefs than Orthodox Christians. This persecution would encompass all proclaimed heretical schools and sects, though, and pave the way for an Orthodox school of Christianity, with an official hierarchy in Scripture. Irenaeus would primarily focus on Valentinus as a person and his perversion of the Scripture, dedicating his entire first chapter to absurd ideas of the disciplines of Valentinus as to the origin, name, order, and conjugal productions of their fancied aeons with the passages of Scripture which they adapt to their opinions. Irenaeus's book Against Heresy, coupled with waning power of the Gnostic schools, would eventually produce what we would call Orthodox Christianity. By ensuring that each new priest and bishop recognized and followed the truth of the Old Testament and the new Orthodox precepts, along with the persecution of any heretics, would guarantee the Orthodox Church dominion over Christianity. Whether to stamp down on heresy or to establish firm control and power over their constituents, this would be firmly about control of the Christian narrative and persecuting any who did not follow it. This orthodoxy would be firmly established in 325 AD with the Council of Nicaea. The first 200 years after the death of Jesus Christ will be an interesting time for Christianity. The religion could very well have become a diaspora of various belief systems, and it indeed was for a while. This system could have continued and developed into a fluid form of religious belief much like India exemplifies throughout its history. However, because of the urgency of various figures like Irenaeus, Christianity will homogenize and turn into a solid power structure that will go on to influence and dominate the world as one of the largest spheres of influence ever.